Hello friends, welcome to the HFY Ode, where we bring you new science fiction stories, a new world, a new adventure. And yes, there is no robotic or AI voices here, only real human voices with real human touch. So let's start this journey, and please subscribe my channel if you like the stories and press the bell icon for the latest updates. Let's have a story. Okay.
They told him the auction was for decommissioned weapons. He thought he was buying scrap metal. What he got instead would shatter 3 empires and rewrite the laws of the Galactic Accord. The auction hall stank of ozone and something Marcus couldn't quite place. Maybe fear, maybe the particular kind of resignation that comes from watching your civilization get picked apart and sold to the highest bidder. He stood in the back row of bidders, human among a sea of chitinous plates, crystalline appendages, and things that might have been tentacles or might have been something worse. His translator implant buzzed against his skull, feeding him a steady stream of languages he'd never heard before yesterday. Lot 47, the auctioneer announced, its voice a series of harmonics that made Marcus's teeth ache. Surplus military asset. Echethran classification. Omega class enforcer unit. Fully functional. Minor behavioral defects noted in file. The hologram flickered to life above the platform. Marcus had expected another weapon. The Galactic Salvage Exchange dealt in decommissioned artillery, burnt-out shield generators, the leftover garbage of 1,000 small wars humans weren't invited to. He'd been buying scrap for 6 months now, hauling it back to Earth's outer colonies where people with more creativity than sense turned alien junk into things that almost worked. What materialized in the hologram wasn't a weapon. It was a woman. 7 feet of her, maybe more. Muscle like carved stone under skin that had a faint blue cast in the auction hall's light. Her hair had been shaved close to her skull, except for a strip down the center, white as bone. Scars ran across her arms in patterns that looked almost deliberate, like someone had taken a blade and written something in a language Marcus didn't know. Her eyes were closed in the hologram. She wore restraints at her wrists and ankles that hummed with the particular frequency of stasis fields. She was breathtaking in the way a storm is breathtaking, in the way a gun is breathtaking when you're looking down the barrel. Behavioral defects? Someone 3 rows ahead asked. The translator rendered it as a clicking pattern that hurt to hear. Unit demonstrates excessive autonomy, the auctioneer said. Refuses standard combat protocols. Previous owner documented 47 instances of strategic insubordination. Recommended for recycling or gladiatorial use. Marcus felt something cold settle in his chest. The translator had said unit. The auctioneer kept saying unit. Opening bid, 6,000 credits. Around him, bidders shifted. A few raised appendages. The price climbed in increments that would have bought Marcus a new ship a year ago, back before Earth had started playing the galactic economy game and losing. 30,000, someone said from the front row. The auctioneer's harmonics shifted to something that might have been pleasure. 30,000 credits. Do I hear? 50,000. Marcus's mouth had moved before his brain caught up. His hand was in the air. Every being in the auction hall turned to look at him, and Marcus felt the weight of their attention like a physical thing. Some of the looks were curious. Some were calculating. One bidder near the front made a sound the translator rendered as laughter. The human bids 50,000, the auctioneer said, and there was something in its harmonics that Marcus didn't like. Do I hear 60? Silence. Marcus's heart hammered. 50,000 credits was everything he had. The money from 6 months of salvage runs, sleeping in his ship, eating ration paste, all of it. He'd been planning to buy a real haul, something he could flip for triple the investment. Sold, the auctioneer said. To the human, Lot 47, Omega class enforcer, designation K774. Please proceed to processing. Marcus stood there while beings flowed around him toward the next lot. His legs felt distant, like they belonged to someone else. What the hell had he just done? Processing took 3 hours. Marcus sat in a waiting cell that smelled like disinfectant and watched a Thelonian clerk fill out forms in triplicate. The clerk had too many fingers and not enough patience. "You understand this unit requires specialized containment," the clerk said. Its voice came out flat through the translator. "Omega-class designations are restricted in 47 systems. You will need to file exemption paperwork in each." "She's a person," Marcus said. The clerk's fingers stopped moving. All of them. Incorrect. Kethran military assets are purpose-bred biological constructs. They possess no legal personhood under Galactic Accord law. "She's a person," Marcus said again. The clerk made a sound like air escaping a tire. "Your species has been part of galactic civilization for 8 months, human. You do not yet understand how things work. This is a weapon, a tool. You have purchased it. What you do with it is your concern, but it is not a person." Marcus wanted to argue. He wanted to explain that Earth had spent the last 200 years figuring out that anything that could think deserved rights, that they'd fought wars over it, that they'd written it into every law they had. But he was sitting in an alien customs office 3,000 light years from home, and the clerk had already moved on to the next form. "Sign here," the clerk said, "and here, and here." Marcus signed. His hand shook. They brought her in on a hovering platform, still locked in stasis. The restraints glowed blue-white, and she hung suspended half a foot off the ground, her eyes still closed. Up close, the scars on her arms were worse. They went deeper than skin. Yes, some of them looked old enough to have healed and been reopened and healed again. "She'll wake when you deactivate the restraints," the clerk said. "Recommend doing so in a secure location. Units sometimes experience disorientation after extended stasis." "How long has she been in stasis?" The clerk consulted its datapad. "This unit was placed in storage 47 standard cycles ago, approximately 9 of your Earth years." 9 years. Marcus felt sick. "Do you require a control collar?" the clerk asked. "For an additional fee, we can—" "No." The clerk's fingers rippled in what might have been a shrug. "Your risk. Processing complete. The unit is yours." They loaded her onto Marcus's ship while he stood in the docking bay and tried to figure out what he was supposed to do next. His ship was a Horizon-class hauler called the Vagrant, was 80 years old and held together with welds, prayers, and a fusion core that should have been replaced before Marcus was born. It had a cargo bay big enough for the platform, barely. He'd have to move his salvage to make room. He spent 2 hours doing exactly that, stacking crates of alien scrap metal against the walls, sweating in the recycled air. The whole time, she hung there on the platform, suspended in light that made her skin look pale. Marcus tried not to look at her face. Every time he did, he felt like he was doing something wrong. When the cargo bay was clear, Marcus stood in front of the platform and tried to breathe. The control panel on the restraints was written in Kethran. Marcus's translator rendered it as a series of glyphs he didn't understand. He pressed buttons until something beeped. The blue light flickered. Her eyes opened. For a second, they were unfocused. The pupils dilated so wide they looked black. Then they found Marcus, and he watched her come back to herself in stages. First confusion, then assessment, then something harder, something that made him take a step back without meaning to. She dropped. The platform lowered her to the deck, and she landed on her feet despite 9 years in stasis, despite the fact that her legs should have been atrophied to bone. She swayed once, caught herself, and straightened. The restraints fell away and clattered to the deck. She was taller than the hologram had suggested. Marcus had to crane his neck to meet her eyes. "You're the human," she said. Her voice was rough, like she'd been shouting. The translator barely had to work. "Marcus," he said. His voice came out steadier than he felt. "Marcus Webb." She looked at him for a long time. Then she looked around the cargo bay, at the piles of scrap, at the old ship's patched walls. When she looked back at Marcus, something in her expression had shifted. "You bought me for 50,000 credits," she said. It wasn't a question. Yeah. Why? Marcus had been asking himself the same thing. He still didn't have a good answer. They were going to recycle you, he said, or sell you to a gladiator pit. So? The word hit him like a fist. She said it with complete calm, like she was asking about the weather. So that's not okay, Marcus said. She laughed. The sound had no humor in it. I'm Catherine made human. I was grown in a vat to kill things efficiently. I've done exactly that for 32 years. Recycling would be a mercy. I don't believe that. You don't know me. No, Marcus agreed. I don't. They stood there in the cargo bay while the ship's ventilation system hummed. Marcus's ship. Marcus's cargo bay. Marcus's... He didn't even know what to call her. Do you have a name? He asked. Her expression went flat. K774. That's not a name. That's a serial number. It's what I am. It's what they called you, Marcus said. What do you want to be called? She stared at him. For the first time since she'd woken up, she looked uncertain. No one's ever asked me that. I'm asking now. She was quiet for so long, Marcus thought she wasn't going to answer. When she spoke, her voice was quieter than before. When I was young, before they finished my conditioning, I had a designation. They used it during training. Kale. Kale, Marcus repeated. The translator didn't change it. It must have been close enough to a human name that the software just let it through. Is that what you want me to call you? I don't know what I want, she said. Marcus nodded. That, at least, he understood? Okay. Then I'll call you Kale until you figure it out. Does that work? She looked at him like he'd said something in a language even the translator couldn't pass. Then, slowly, she nodded. Why are you doing this? She asked. Marcus didn't have a good answer for that either. All he had was the sick feeling in his chest when they'd called her a unit, when the clerk had talked about her like a thing, when he'd seen 9 years of storage in her file and known that no one had cared enough to wake her up. Because someone should, he said. So Kyle didn't trust him. Marcus couldn't blame her. She spent the first 3 days on the Vagrant, moving through the ship like a ghost, silent and watchful. She didn't sleep as far as Marcus could tell. She didn't eat unless he put food in front of her. She stood in the cargo bay for hours at a time, staring at nothing, her hands loose at her sides. Marcus gave her space. He flew the Vagrant out of the auction system and toward the nearest trade hub, a place called Meridian Station, where humans had managed to establish a small outpost. The trip would take 2 weeks through standard space. Marcus used the time to figure out what the hell he was supposed to do. He'd bought a person. The Galactic Accord didn't see it that way, but Marcus did, and that meant he had responsibilities. He couldn't just dump her somewhere, and he couldn't send her back. And keeping her on the ship indefinitely felt wrong in a way he couldn't articulate. On the 4th day, he found her in the cargo bay again. She was moving this time, running through a series of exercises that looked like combat drills. Her movements were precise, economical, the kind of efficiency that came from muscle memory drilled so deep it didn't need thought. She moved like water, like violence, like something that had been made to kill, and knew it. Marcus watched from the doorway. When she finished, she turned and met his eyes without surprise. She'd known he was there the whole time. You're a soldier, Marcus said. I was an Omega Enforcer, Kale said. We weren't soldiers. Soldiers have choices. What did you enforce? Whatever our owners wanted. She picked up a cloth and wiped sweat from her face. Even after 9 years in stasis, her body moved like a weapon. Compliance, territory disputes, executions. The Kethrin Empire used us for problems that needed solving with force. And the Empire sold you because I got ideas above my station. The corner of her mouth moved, not quite a smile. I started questioning orders, suggesting alternatives. The Kethrins don't tolerate that in their constructs. After the 47th incident, they decided I was defective and put me in storage. Marcus leaned against the doorframe. What was the 47th incident? Kyle was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was careful. They ordered me to clear a settlement. 30,000 civilians. I told my handler there were other options. Blockade, negotiation, selective targeting of infrastructure. He said those weren't my decisions to make. What did you do? I followed orders, Kyle said. The words came out flat. And then I told my handler exactly what I thought of him. Used some of the language I'd learned from the settlement. They didn't like that. Marcus felt something twist in his chest. You killed 30,000 people, and then they punished you for talking back? The killing was expected. The talking back was insubordination. She met his eyes. That's how the Empire works. That's how all of them work. You follow orders or you get recycled. There's no middle ground. There should be. Maybe. Kyle folded the cloth carefully, her fingers precise. But there isn't. Not for things like me. You're not a thing. She looked at him with something that might have been pity. You keep saying that, but you're wrong. And I was designed in a genetic fabrication facility. I was grown to specifications, enhanced reflexes, reinforced bone structure, accelerated healing, combat neural architecture. I'm as much a thing as your ship's fusion core. My fusion core can't have a conversation, Marcus said. Neither could I, before they installed the language processing upgrades. Kyle set the cloth down. You're thinking of me like I'm human. I'm not. I don't have whatever makes your species special. I'm just very good programming in a useful shape. Marcus shook his head. That's what they told you. It's what I am. No, Marcus said. It's what they made you believe you are. There's a difference. Kyle studied him for a long moment. Then she turned away, ending the conversation as definitely as if she'd slammed a door. And they reached Meridian Station 12 days later. The station hung in orbit around a gas giant, a sprawling construct of modules and docking rings that had been built by 7 different species and showed it. Marcus guided the vagrant into dock and paid the fees with money he didn't have. The human outpost was in Hab Ring 3, a collection of prefab modules that Earth Colonial Administration had bolted together and called a consulate. Marcus had been there twice before. The consul was a woman named Sarah Vance, who'd been in the Earth Defense Force before taking the diplomatic posting, and she didn't suffer fools. She also didn't suffer Kyle. Marcus made the mistake of bringing her to the meeting. The consul took one look at Kyle, and her expression went cold. You bought an Omega-class enforcer, Vance said. It wasn't a question. Her name is Kyle, Marcus said. Vance ignored him. She looked at Kyle with the kind of assessment that came from military training. How many confirmed kills? Kyle met her eyes. 2,412. The number hung in the air. Vance's jaw tightened. And you brought her to a civilian station, Vance said to Marcus. Are you out of your mind? She's not going to hurt anyone. She's a genetically engineered weapon designed to kill efficiently. That's not speculation, Webb. That's her military record. Vance pulled up a holographic display. Marcus saw files, incident reports, combat assessments. The Kethran Empire doesn't make mistakes. If they classified her as defective, there's a reason. The reason is she started thinking for herself, Marcus said, which makes her more dangerous, or not less. Vance closed the files. I'm sorry, but I can't allow this. You need to transfer her to Earth authorities for assessment and containment. No. Vance looked at him. That wasn't a request. She's not a threat. You've known her for 2 weeks. I've been reading threat assessments for 20 years. Vance stood up. I'm putting in the paperwork. Earth Defense Force will take custody within 48 hours. Marcus felt anger rise in his chest, hot and immediate. You can't do that. I can, and I am, for the safety of the station and its inhabitants. Vance looked at Kyle. I'm sorry. This isn't personal. Kyle's expression didn't change. Yes, it is, she said quietly. It's always personal when someone decides you're too dangerous to exist. They left the consulate and made it halfway back to the docking ring before Kyle stopped walking. Marcus turned to look at her. They were in a corridor junction, one of the station's main thoroughfares. Beings moved around them in streams, paying them no attention. Kyle stood in the middle of the traffic like a stone in a river. "You should let them take me," she said. "No." "Marcus?" "No." He said it firmly enough that a Saronite merchant nearby clicked its mandibles in alarm. "I didn't buy you so they could lock you up." "You didn't buy me for anything," Kyle said. "You made an impulse decision at an auction, and now you're stuck with it. I get it, but this is your way out. Let the Earth forces take me. Go back to salvage running. Forget this happened. Is that what you want?" Kyle looked at him for a long time. "What I want doesn't matter. It does to me." "Why?" The word came out sharp, frustrated. "Why does it matter to you what happens to me? You don't know me. You don't owe me anything. I'm not even your species." Marcus tried to find the right words. "My grandmother had a saying. She said you measure a civilization by how it treats the people no one's paying attention to. The ones without power, without voices, without anyone to stand up for them." He met Kyle's eyes. "Everyone on that station sees you as a threat. The consul, the merchants, probably half the beings on this dock. All they see is what you can do, not who you are. Maybe that's all there is. I don't believe that. You keep saying that." Kyle's hands clenched at her sides. "But you don't know. You haven't lived what I've lived. You haven't done what I've done." "No," Marcus agreed. "But I've seen you for 2 weeks. I've seen you move through my ship like you're afraid to take up space. I've heard you talk about following orders you knew were wrong. I've watched you train in the cargo bay like you're trying to remember what it feels like to have a purpose." He stepped closer. "You're not what they made you. You're what you chose to become, despite what they made you." Kyle stared at him. For a moment, something cracked in her expression. Something vulnerable, something that looked like hope and terror in equal measure. Then alarms started screaming. The station's emergency lights strobed red. The translator implant in Marcus's skull buzzed with competing signals, alien voices overlapping in panic. Around them, see beings scattered. Some ran toward emergency shelters, others just ran. "All personnel evacuate Habring 3, a mechanical voice announced. "Station defense systems engaging hostile contact. This is not a drill." Marcus grabbed Kyle's arm. "We need to move." She didn't budge. She was looking up, her head cocked like she was listening to something Marcus couldn't hear. "Kyle, Raiders," she said. 3 ships. Modified Kresh-class destroyers. They're cutting through the station's outer hull. How do you... I can hear the weapons discharge through the station's frame. Feel the vibration pattern." She looked at him, and her eyes were different now. Focused. Clear. "This is a boarding action. They're going for the commercial district. High-value targets." Another alarm. This one was closer, in the Habring itself. Marcus heard screams. Kyle's whole posture changed. The uncertainty, the careful distance she'd been maintaining, it all dropped away. What replaced it was the thing Marcus had seen in the hologram at the auction. The weapon. The Omega-class enforcer. "Get to your ship," she said. "What are you going to do?" She was already moving, her stride lengthening into a run. "What I was made for." Marcus ran after her. He shouldn't have. He should have done exactly what she said, gone to the Vagrant and locked the airlock and let station security handle it. But he'd just spent 2 weeks telling her she wasn't a weapon, and damned if he was going to let her prove herself wrong the first time things got dangerous. They found the Raiders in Habring 3's Central Plaza. There were 8 of them, all different species, and all wearing the kind of improvised armor that meant they'd pulled gear from a dozen different sources. They had plasma rifles and were using them liberally. Bodies lay on the deck. Some were moving, some weren't. Kyle didn't slow down. She hit the first raider like a freight train, grabbed his rifle, reversed it, and fired into the second raider's chest plate before the first one hit the ground. Her movements were economical, precise, and absolutely brutal. She moved through them like they were obstacles, not opponents. Marcus watched her disarm, disable, and neutralize 6 raiders in the space of maybe 15 seconds. The last 2 tried to run. She let them. Then she stood in the middle of the plaza, breathing hard, holding a plasma rifle she'd taken from someone who'd needed it less than 5 seconds ago. Around her, injured beings were crying, calling for help. The plaza's deck was scorched black in places where plasma fire had missed. Kyle looked at Marcus. Her expression was unreadable. "This is what I am," she said. Marcus walked toward her. Around them, station security was arriving, armed beings in uniform spreading out to secure the area. He could hear them calling medical teams, establishing a perimeter. Someone was shouting about Earth forces. He stopped in front of Kyle. "No," he said. "This is what you can do. There's a difference." Before she could respond, Consul Vance appeared, flanked by 2 EDF officers in tactical gear. She looked at the disabled raiders, at Kyle, at the plasma rifle still in Kyle's hands. "Stand down," Vance said. Kyle didn't move. She looked at Marcus. Marcus looked back. "It's okay," he said quietly. "Shh, put it down." For a second, he thought she wouldn't. Her fingers were tight on the rifle, her whole body coiled. Then, slowly, she set it on the deck and stepped back. Vance approached carefully. She looked at the raiders, at the injured civilians, at the bodies. When she looked back at Kyle, her expression was complicated. "You just saved about 40 lives," Vance said. Kyle said nothing. The raiders were after the commercial hub. If they'd gotten through... Vance shook her head. "Station security was still scrambling when you engaged. You bought us the time we needed." "I followed my training," Kyle said flatly. "You followed your conscience," Vance corrected. She was quiet for a moment. Then she looked at Marcus. "I'm pulling the containment order." Marcus blinked. "What?" "You were right. I saw a threat. I should have seen a person." Vance looked at Kyle again. "You could have kept running. You could have escaped in the confusion. Instead, you stopped a massacre. That's not programming. That's choice." Kyle's expression didn't change, but Marcus saw her hands unclench slightly. "I'm still filing a report," Vance continued. "Earth Command needs to know about this, but I'm recommending you for asylum status rather than custody." She paused. "If that's what you want." "I don't understand," Kyle said. "Earth doesn't have a lot of power in galactic politics yet," Vance said. "But we do have certain principles. One of them is that people get to choose their own fate. You've been property for your whole life. I'm offering you the chance to be something else." Kyle looked at Marcus. He nodded. "What would that mean?" she asked. It means you'd be under Earth jurisdiction. You'd have legal personhood, rights, protections." Vance gestured at the plaza. "It also means, if you wanted to, you could work. Use your skills for something other than someone else's war. We could use people like you. People who know what they're doing when things go wrong. You want to employ me?" Kyle's voice was careful. "I want to give you options," Vance said. "What you do with them is up to you." They spent 3 days on Meridian Station while Earth Command processed Kale's asylum request. Marcus used the time to sell his salvage haul for less than he'd hoped, but more than he'd feared. Kale spent most of it in the consulate, answering questions, filling out forms, getting scanned by medical equipment that made worried noises about her genetic modifications. On the 3rd day, Vance called them both back to her office. "Asylum approved," she said without preamble. "You're officially a person under Earth law, Kyle. Congratulations." Kyle looked down at the datapad Vance pushed across the desk. Marcus saw lines of legal text, official seals, a photograph of Kale that had been taken yesterday. In the photo, she looked uncomfortable. "What now?" Kyle asked. "Now you decide what you want to do with your life." Vance leaned back in her chair. "I meant what I said about work. We're establishing security contracts with stations throughout this sector. Having someone with your experience would be valuable. But that's not your only option. You could go to Earth. See what humanity's actually like. You could stay with Webb if he'll have you." Or you could leave and find your own path. The choice is yours. Kyle looked at Marcus. What do you think? I think, Marcus said slowly, that you should do whatever feels right. I'll support it either way. Even if I leave? Even if you leave? She was quiet for a long time. Marcus watched her turn the datapad over in her hands, looking at it like she'd never seen one before. Maybe she hadn't. Not one that had her name on it. Her real name. I don't know how to make choices, she said finally. I've never had to before. That's okay, Marcus said. You learn by doing. That's how everyone figures it out. Kyle set the datapad down. She looked at Vance. If I work for Earth, what would I be doing? Security consultation mostly. Threat assessment. Training personnel for hostile environments. Some stations want someone who can respond to incidents like the one 3 days ago. Vance pulled up a display. We're not asking you to fight. We're asking you to help people survive. That's different than what I did before? Completely different, Vance agreed. Kyle nodded slowly. Then she looked at Marcus. What about you? What are you going to do? Marcus hadn't thought that far ahead. He'd spent the last few weeks reacting, not planning. I guess I'll keep running salvage. It's what I know. Could you use a partner? Kyle asked. The question caught him off guard. What? Someone who knows ships, weapons, how to handle trouble when it shows up. Kyle's expression was carefully neutral. You said you'd support whatever I chose. I'm choosing to stay with you. If you'll have me. Marcus felt something warm and unexpected bloom in his chest. You want to work on a broken-down salvage hauler, after everything? I want to work with someone who sees me as a person, Kyle said. Everything else is negotiable. Vance made a sound that might have been a laugh. I think that's my cue to leave you two to work out the details. She stood up. Kyle, welcome to the human race. Try not to break too many things. No promises, Kyle said. After Vance left, Marcus and Kyle sat in the office for a while, not saying anything. Through the viewport, Marcus could see the station's curve, the ships coming and going, the vast emptiness of space beyond. Thank you, Kyle said quietly. For what? For seeing me when everyone else saw a weapon. For spending 50,000 credits you didn't have. For being stubborn enough to believe I was worth it. She met his eyes. You changed my life. You were already changing it, Marcus said. I just gave you the room to do it. Maybe. Kyle stood up. Either way, I owe you, and I pay my debts. You don't owe me anything. Yes, I do. She offered her hand, human style. Partner? Marcus took it. Her grip was careful, controlled, like she was aware of exactly how much force she was using. Partner? He agreed. They left the consulate and walked back to the Vagrant through the station's corridors. Beings moved around them, living their lives, pursuing their business. No one paid them much attention. Just a human and his partner, friend. Whatever Kyle was becoming. At the airlock, Kyle stopped. Marcus? Yeah? What your grandmother said. About measuring civilizations by how they treat people without power. She looked at him. Earth sounds like a strange place. It is, Marcus said. We're messy. We argue about everything. We make mistakes constantly. But we're trying. That counts for something. I'd like to see it someday. Then we'll go there, Marcus said. After we finish this salvage run. And maybe the next one. And maybe the one after that. Kyle smiled. It was the first time Marcus had seen her do it. The expression transformed her face, made her look younger, less like a weapon, and more like a person who was just starting to figure out what happiness felt like. Sounds like a plan, she said. They boarded the Vagrant and sealed the airlock behind them. The ship's systems hummed to life, familiar and reliable despite their age. Marcus took the pilot's seat. Kyle stood behind him, her hand resting on the back of his chair. Where to? She asked. Marcus pulled up the navigation charts. There was a salvage field 3 systems over, the remains of an old battle between 2 species whose names Marcus couldn't pronounce. Good scrap, profitable, far enough from major shipping lanes that no one would bother them. There, he said, pointing. Kyle leaned forward to look at the display. Her reflection appeared in the viewport, ghostly and translucent. What are we looking for? Whatever we can find, Marcus said. That's the job. We pick through what other people have thrown away and find value in it. Seems appropriate, Kyle said. Marcus glanced at her. Yeah? Yeah. She settled into the co-pilot's seat, her movements already comfortable in the space. Someone did that for me. It seems only fair to return the favor. Marcus powered up the engines. The Vagrant shuddered, protested, then smoothed out into the familiar rumble that meant she was ready to fly. You know, he said, we're probably going to end up in a lot of trouble. Probably, Kyle agreed. Raiders, pirates, territorial disputes, angry merchants, the occasional war. Sounds exciting. You could still take Vance's offer, safe work, regular pay, legitimate danger instead of the freelance kind. Kyle looked at him. Could I? Of course. Then I'm choosing this, she said. Whatever trouble comes, we handle it together. Marcus felt something settle in his chest, something that felt like rightness. He'd gone to that auction looking for scrap metal and found something infinitely more valuable. He'd made an impulse decision that should have ruined him and instead had given him a purpose he hadn't known he was looking for. Together, he agreed. The Vagrant pulled away from Meridian Station and accelerated toward open space. Behind them, the station's lights grew smaller. Ahead, the salvage field waited, full of broken things and second chances. Marcus and Cale flew toward it side by side. The salvage field looked like a graveyard from a distance. 3 years ago, 2 corporate fleets had met here over mining rights to an asteroid cluster that turned out to be worthless. They'd shot at each other for 6 hours, lost 17 ships between them, and limped away with nothing to show for it except casualty reports and shareholder lawsuits. What remained hung in the void like metallic tombstones, slowly tumbling through space with no purpose except to wait for someone like Marcus to come along and give them one. Marcus brought the Vagrant in slow, navigating between chunks of hull plating the size of buildings. The ship's sensors painted the debris field in false color on his display. Reds for high-density metals worth hauling, blues for composites that might have resale value, grays for everything else, the worthless junk that nobody wanted. That one, Cale said, pointing at a section of destroyer hull that was registering deep crimson on the scanner. Looks intact enough to have salvageable components. Marcus adjusted course. Over the past 3 weeks since leaving Meridian Station, Cale had developed an eye for profitable wreckage. She'd never done salvage work before, but she approached it the way she approached everything else, with complete focus and a precision that bordered on unsettling. She'd learned the Vagrant's systems faster than Marcus had. She'd optimized their cutting procedures. She'd even figured out how to coax an extra 2% efficiency from the cargo bay's storage configuration. Working with her was like working with a machine that happened to have opinions. Except she wasn't a machine. Marcus kept having to remind himself of that because Cale kept acting like she was. She slept 4 hours a night on a schedule she'd set herself. She ate exactly enough calories to maintain her enhanced physiology. She spent her free time maintaining equipment or running combat drills in the cargo bay. When Marcus had suggested she might want to, relax occasionally, as she'd looked at him like he'd suggested she might want to breathe vacuum. That's not what I'm for, she'd said. Marcus had dropped it. He figured she'd learn eventually, or she wouldn't. Either way, it wasn't his job to tell her how to be a person. That was something she had to figure out herself. The Vagrant drifted alongside the destroyer wreckage. Marcus activated the external manipulator arms while Cale suited up for EVA work. The suits they had were human standard, which meant they were too small for her 7-foot frame. She'd modified hers with sections from an old Thelonian environmental rig, creating something that looked like it had been assembled by a lunatic, but worked well enough to keep her alive. Cutting through the outer hull now, Marcus said into the comm. Should have access to the engineering section in about 10 minutes. Copy, Kyle's voice came back. I'm heading out. Marcus watched her on the external cameras as she mag-locked to the vagrant's hull and made her way toward the wreckage. She moved through zero-G like she'd been born to it, her enhanced reflexes adapting to the environment without hesitation. When she reached the destroyer hull, she pulled a plasma torch from her tool belt and started cutting. They worked for 3 hours. Marcus coordinated the cutting from inside the vagrant, directing the manipulator arms to pull away sections of hull plating while Kyle extracted components from inside. It was methodical work, the kind that let your mind wander. Marcus found himself thinking about Earth, about whether he'd ever actually go back, so about what Kyle would think of it if they did. "Got something?" Kyle's voice said suddenly. Marcus focused on her camera feed. She was deep inside the destroyer now, in what looked like a cargo hold. Her helmet light illuminated something that definitely wasn't ship components. It was a container, roughly human-sized, sealed, and judging by the frost patterns on its surface, still active. "Is that what I think it is?" Marcus asked. "Stasis pod," Kyle confirmed. "Military grade. Kethrin design." Marcus felt something cold settle in his stomach. "Is there someone in it?" Kyle moved closer, wiping frost from a display panel on the pod's surface. Biometric readings show positive. 1 occupant. Life signs stable. "Can you tell who?" "Designation reads..." Kyle paused. "K937. The cold in Marcus's stomach spread. "Another Omega Enforcer, out here in a corporate graveyard, sealed in stasis for 3 years, waiting. The odds of them randomly finding this were astronomical, which meant it probably wasn't random. "Bring it aboard," Marcus said. "Marcus, I know what you're going to say, but we can't just leave them out here." Kyle was quiet for a moment. "You don't know what's in this pod. Could be someone worse than I ever was. Could be someone who'll kill us both the second we wake them up. Could be someone who needs help." "You keep doing this," Kyle said. There was something in her voice Marcus couldn't quite identify. "Picking up strays, making them your problem. Is that what you are, a stray?" Another pause. "I don't know what I am yet, still figuring that out." "Then maybe they are too," Marcus said. "Bring the pod aboard. We'll figure out the rest after." He heard Kyle sigh through the comm. "This is a bad idea." "Probably. You're going to get us killed." "Maybe. And you're doing it anyway." "Yeah. Humans are insane," Kyle said. But he could hear her moving, hear the clank of the pod's maglocks disengaging. "Pulling it out now. Going to need help with the weight?" Marcus activated the cargo bay's external crane and guided it toward Kale's position. Together, they maneuvered the stasis pod into the vagrant's hold. It took an hour and nearly resulted in 3 different catastrophic decompression events, but eventually they got it secured. Kyle came back inside, stripped off her EVA suit, and stood looking at the pod. Frost was already forming on its surface in the cargo bay's humidity. The display panel glowed with Kethrin glyphs Marcus's translator couldn't quite pass. "What do you want to do with it?" Kyle asked. Marcus walked around the pod, studying it from different angles. The design was similar to the restraints Kale had been wearing when he'd bought her. Same blue-white light. Same humming frequency. Somewhere inside was another person who'd been made into a weapon, locked away because they'd stopped being useful. "Wake them up," he said. "Here? On the ship? Where else?" Kyle gestured at the pod. "This is an Omega-class designation. That means they're like me. Enhanced combat capability. Neural architecture optimized for violence. We don't know their conditioning level. Don't know their psychological state. Don't know if they've been in stasis for 3 years or 30. So we'll find out." "Marcus, you were in a pod when I found you," Marcus said quietly. "You could have killed me the second you woke up. You didn't. I was disoriented, confused. If I'd been properly conditioned, I would have neutralized you before you finished speaking. But you weren't. And you didn't." Marcus looked at her. "Maybe they won't either." Kyle closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, they'd shifted into that flat, Assessing mode, Marcus had learned, meant she was running tactical calculations. If we do this, we do it my way. Restrain the pod before opening it. Secure the cargo bay. Have weapons ready. At the first sign of hostile action, we put them back in stasis. Agreed? They spent the next hour preparing, as Kyle welded restraint brackets around the stasis pod and ran power cables to the Vagrant's main systems so they could control it remotely. Marcus positioned himself at the cargo bay's control panel with a finger over the emergency lockdown button. Kyle stood in front of the pod with a plasma pistol in her hand. Ready? Marcus asked. Kyle nodded. Marcus accessed the pod's control interface through his translator. The Kethrin glyphs resolved into something resembling a menu. He found what looked like the wake sequence and hesitated. Last chance to change your mind, Kyle said. Not changing it. Didn't think so. Marcus activated the sequence. The pod's hum changed pitch. The blue-white light flickered. Through the frost-covered surface, Marcus could see movement inside. A shape. A person. Coming back to consciousness after 3 years of nothing. The pod opened. Steam billowed out, mixing with the cargo bay's air. Through it, Marcus could see them. Smaller than Kyle, maybe 6 feet tall. Same reinforced build, same scarred skin. But where Kyle's hair was white, theirs was dark as vacuum. Where Kyle moved with careful control, they came out of the pod like a weapon being fired, all explosive force and zero hesitation. They hit the restraints and rebounded. Kyle's pistol tracked them. They looked at the weapon, at Kyle, and went absolutely still. K937, Kyle said. Her voice was calm, professional. Stand down. The person in the pod focused on her. Their pupils dilated. K774, they said. Their voice was rougher than Kale's, like they'd damaged it screaming. Hey, you're alive. So are you. I don't understand. They looked around the cargo bay, at Marcus, at the Vagrant's worn bulkheads. Where is this? What happened to the assault carrier? The assault carrier was destroyed 3 years ago, Kyle said. You've been in stasis. We found you in the wreckage. The person, K937, stared at her. 3 years. Yeah? The battle. Over. Lost. The Kethrin Empire doesn't exist anymore. Got absorbed by the Thelonian Collective after the economic collapse. Marcus watched K937 process this information. Their hands clenched and unclenched against the restraints. Their breathing quickened. Then, without warning, they started laughing. It wasn't a happy sound. It was the kind of laugh that came from somewhere broken, from a place where the only choice was laugh or scream, and laughing took less effort. Gone, they said between bursts of laughter. All of it. We fought for an empire that doesn't exist anymore. They looked at Kyle. Why did you wake me up? Should have left me in the dark. Better than this. That wasn't our choice to make, Marcus said. K937's attention snapped to him. Who are you? Marcus Webb. This is my ship. Human. Yeah. You own her? They gestured at Kale with their chin. No, Marcus said firmly. She's her own person. That got another laugh, shorter this time. Kethrins aren't people. We're weapons, tools, things that kill when pointed in the right direction. You keep using that word, Marcus said. We, like you're still part of something. The Empire's gone. What are you part of now? K937 went quiet. Their eyes, which had been wild with laughter, emptied out into something worse. Something hollow. Nothing, they said. I'm part of nothing. Kyle lowered her weapon. That's not true, isn't it? K937 looked at her. What do you do, 7-4? When there's no one to give you orders? No targets to eliminate? No purpose? I choose, Kyle said quietly. I figure out what I want, and I do that instead. And what do you want? Kyle was quiet for a moment. I'm still working on that part, but I get to work on it. That's the difference. K937 studied her. Something in their expression shifted. They let you go? Someone bought me at an auction. Then he gave me a choice. Kyle glanced at Marcus. I chose to stay. Why? Because he sees me as a person. Not a weapon, not a thing. A person. Kyle stepped closer to the pod. You can have that too, if you want it. K937 looked between them. Marcus could see the wheels turning behind their eyes, see them trying to process information that didn't fit their conditioning. Finally, they spoke. What's my alternative? We put you back in stasis, Marcus said. Take you to Meridian Station. Let Earth authorities figure out what to do with you. Earth. K937 said the word like they were tasting it. The newcomers. Everyone says you're weak. Soft. Everyone says that, Marcus agreed. We have different ideas about strength. Such as? Choice. Self-determination. The right to decide what your life means. Marcus moved closer. You're awake. You're alive. What happens next is up to you. K937 was quiet for a long time. Marcus watched them think, watched them struggle with concepts that had probably never occurred to them before. Finally, they looked at Kyle. What do I call you? They asked. You said 7-4, but that's not a name. Kyle, Kyle said. I call myself Kyle now. Why? Because it's mine. Nobody gave it to me. I chose it. K93. Seven's throat worked. I don't have one of those. Then pick one, Marcus said. That's how it works. You decide who you want to be. I don't know how to do that. Nobody does it first, Kyle said. You learn. They were quiet again. Then, Ash. I want to be called Ash. Why Ash? Marcus asked. Because that's what's left when things burn down, Ash said. When everything you knew is gone, just Ash. Might as well own it. Kyle nodded slowly. Ash. Okay. Marcus released the restraints. Ash stood up carefully, testing their legs, their balance. They looked at their hands like they'd never seen them before. What now? They asked. Now you decide what you want to do, Marcus said. You can stay here. You can leave. You can go to Earth. Whatever you choose, we'll help. Ash looked around the cargo bay. What is this ship? Salvage hauler. We pick through wreckage, pull out valuable components, sell them at trade stations. Garbage work. Honest work, Marcus corrected. And you let her... Ash gestured at Kyle. You let her work with you? Even though she's my partner, Marcus said. She pulls her weight, I pull mine. We split the profits. End of story. Ash stared at him. You're serious. Completely. Humans really are insane. So, we've been told. Ash was quiet for a moment. Then they looked at Kyle. Is he always like this? Worse, Kyle said. He bought me at an auction for 50,000 credits he didn't have. Brought me onto his ship. Gave me personhood status under Earth law. Turned down a reasonable job offer so I could stay with him. She paused. He's stubborn, idealistic, makes bad decisions for good reasons. Sounds exhausting. It is, Kyle agreed, but it's better than the alternative. Ash looked between them. Marcus could see the moment the decision crystallized behind their eyes. If I stay, they said carefully, what would I do? Whatever you're good at, Marcus said. Kyle handles security and mechanical work. I handle piloting and sales. We need someone who knows ships, weapons, how to spot trouble. I'm good at killing people. That's not what I'm asking for. It's what I am. It's what you were trained to be, Marcus corrected. What you are is something you get to decide. Maybe you're good at killing people. Maybe that skill translates to protecting people instead. Maybe it doesn't and you find something else entirely. Point is, you get to figure it out. Ash looked at their hands again. I don't know if I can. Neither did I, Kyle said quietly. But Marcus wouldn't let me fail. He kept believing I was worth saving even when I didn't believe it myself. She met Ash's eyes. We can do the same for you, if you want. Marcus watched Ash think about it. He could see the war happening behind their eyes, the conditioning fighting against the possibility of something different. Finally, Ash spoke. One condition, they said. What? If I go crazy, If the conditioning kicks in and I become what they made me to be, you put me down. Kyle does it. Clean, fast. No hesitation. Kyle's jaw tightened. Ash, that's the condition. I won't be a weapon pointed at innocents again. I won't. Their voice cracked. If I can't control myself, someone has to control me. Permanently. Marcus looked at Kyle. She looked back. He could see the pain in her expression, the recognition. She'd probably made the same calculation about herself 1,000 times. Okay, Kyle said quietly, but it won't come to that. You don't know that? No, but I choose to believe it anyway. Ash let out a long breath. Then I'm staying, for now. We'll see how it goes. Marcus felt something loosen in his chest. Welcome aboard the Vagrant. It's a terrible name. I didn't pick it. Previous owner did. Previous owner had no imagination. Also accurate. Ash looked around the cargo bay again. I'm going to need quarters. Got a spare cabin, Marcus said. It's small. Probably too small for you, but it's yours if you want it. Better than a stasis pod. That's the spirit. They spent the rest of the day getting Ash settled. Marcus showed them the ship, the systems, the areas they could access. Kyle gave them a tour of the cargo bay, showed them where the tools were kept, explained their current salvage operation. Ash absorbed it all with the same intensity Kyle had shown, asking questions that were smart and tactical and revealed exactly how their mind worked. By the time ship's night cycle rolled around, Marcus was exhausted. When he found Kyle in the common area, drinking something that smelled vaguely like coffee, but definitely wasn't. How are they doing? Marcus asked, dropping into a seat. Adjusting, processing, trying to figure out if this is real or some kind of psychological test. Kyle took a sip of her not coffee. They're scared. Can't blame them. No. Kyle was quiet for a moment. Thank you. For what? For not leaving them. For giving them the same chance you gave me. Marcus shrugged. Seemed like the right thing to do. Most people wouldn't have done it. Most people would have seen a dangerous weapon and left it sealed. I'm not most people. No. Kyle smiled slightly. You're really not. They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Through the viewport, the salvage field tumbled slowly past, chunks of metal catching starlight. And somewhere in the ship, Ash was probably not sleeping, probably running the same mental loops Kyle had run for weeks, trying to figure out what it meant to be a person instead of a weapon. You think they'll be okay? Marcus asked. I don't know, Kyle said honestly. They're carrying a lot of damage. More than I am, I think. They were in combat when they got put in stasis. Might still be fighting that battle in their head. But they've got a chance. Yeah, because of you. Marcus looked at her. Because of us. You're the one who talked them down. Convinced them staying was an option. Only because you taught me it was possible first. They fell quiet again. Marcus found himself thinking about the chain of events that had led here. An auction. An impulse decision. 50,000 credits he didn't have. All of it should have been a disaster. Instead, it had become something else. Something that felt like purpose. Kyle, he said. Yeah? Do you ever regret it? Staying with me instead of taking Vance's offer? She thought about it for a moment. No, she said finally. This is harder, more uncertain. But it's mine. I chose it. That matters. Good. Why do you ask? Marcus gestured at the ship around them. Because we've got 2 Omega-class enforcers on a salvage hauler now. Things are going to get complicated. Kyle's smile widened slightly. Things were already complicated. This just makes it interesting. That's one word for it. You worried. Terrified, Marcus admitted. But also, I don't know. Hopeful. We're building something here. Something different than what either of you came from. Maybe something good. Maybe, Kyle agreed. She finished her not coffee and stood up. Get some sleep, Marcus. Tomorrow we finish this salvage run and figure out where to go next. Any preferences? Somewhere quiet. Ash needs time to adjust. Quiet in a salvage field, right? You know what I mean. Marcus did. He watched Kyle leave, heard her footsteps fade down the corridor toward her cabin. Then he sat alone in the common area and looked out at the wreckage field. 3 years ago, 2 corporations had destroyed each other here over nothing. Now their leftover ships were giving 3 people a second chance at having lives that mattered. Marcus had no idea where this was going, but for the first time in a long time, he was looking forward to finding out. He finished his own drink and headed for his cabin. Tomorrow would bring new problems, new challenges, new decisions that would probably be mistakes. But tonight, they were all safe, all choosing their own paths. That was enough.